Down the world's darkest highways into the vast unknown, yours truly, David Barnabas Spector, leads you on a unique journey into the minds of professional wrestlers, paranormal investigators, and an array of human and inhuman oddities. This is RadioDARK. And here on RadioDARK, listeners have grown to expect the unexpected. I've got yet another guest joining me here today that you would not believe was willing to come on an episode with yours truly, David Barnabas Spector. He is, without question, one of the most popular athletes in future great wrestling. A man who started his career as an announcer and a broadcaster. From that to becoming a professional wrestler, an actor. He is an absolute renaissance man and a force to be reckoned with in and out of the professional wrestling industry. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you'll find this hard to believe, especially due to our past history, but joining me here today on RadioDARK is none other than the Heavy Metal Viking himself, Hooks. Hooks, listen, I appreciate you putting our differences aside and being willing to come on the program today.
Well, I appreciate you having me. If you would have told me, I don't know, at the beginning of 2020, that at some point you would be interviewing me on a podcast and I'd be doing it voluntarily, I would have laughed at you. This is really unusual, but we're living in a very unusual right now, so I'm willing to do something unusual. Best to take. I'm still surprised this is happening, and I listened to your intro, and it was a very flattering intro, so I thought I'd hear you say good things about it. But, okay, so far so good.
Exactly. It's just a small taste of the benefits of working with an individual such as myself, Hooks. And, you know, despite our past differences, honestly, my name isn't Oscar Mayer. We can cut the baloney. I mean, you and I have known each other for quite some time. As a matter of fact, back in the not too distant past, I mean, you and I were acquaintances. We were friends. We actually, at one point in time, we went and enjoyed a Gwar show together. And believe it or not, in this current modern-day environment, thinking about going to see a show live is almost incomprehensible. But we went to see the outlandish band Gwar live, and we enjoyed it. And we enjoyed talking with each other. Do you remember?
Absolutely. Oh, I remember. I know. As you said, I've known you for quite some time, and you said acquaintances, but the truth is, we have been friends for a long time, and that's why it gets so frustrating when someone you're friends with does something or things that really rub you the wrong way. And so I think that made things even more dynamic between us. So yeah, this is very strange to kind of almost come back full circle. I'm not going to say everything's forgotten and in the past, because there's a lot of unresolved stuff there, but it's one of the reasons I was willing to do what I'm doing is because we do have a past as friends, and we'll see where this takes us.
Well, Hooks, I know that you are a film aficionado and an actor, absolutely an amazing entertainer. There was a film that came out several years ago starring Brad Pitt called Babel. Really, it was a film all about just not being able to understand one another, miscommunication. And honestly, Hooks, I really think that that's the only issue that you and I have ever had, was just a breakdown in communication. So today, we look to remedy that particular situation, to heal the wounds of the past. The very first episode of RadioDARK, I reached out to William Wolf, an individual that you know all too well, and I'm sure we'll speak about that more later in the program. But, even though that particular episode didn't end exactly like I had hoped, Will and I we began to mend fences. Some wounds at least began to heal. We were able to put at least a light layer of salve of Neosporin on the wound to begin that much-needed healing process. And with everything going on in the world today, that's all I'm trying to do, is just to mend fences and to heal wounds and to turn over a new leaf. And again, I with a man of your stature, of your ability, I absolutely appreciate the fact that you were willing to at least somewhat accept my olive branch extended to you.
Well, I'm going to look at that olive branch. And as far as your show with Will, let's hope that this one doesn't end quite like that one did. But yeah, let's just, you know what? There's no reason to beat a dead horse. We got here, and we'll see how it goes, but I guess we don't have to dwell on... It might be better if we didn't dwell on our differences, and let's just see where this conversation takes us.
Precisely. Let us not dwell, let us be well. Look at that. That's a bumper sticker. Put that on a T-shirt. Go ahead and sell that. I give you permission. Go right ahead. But Hook, well, absolutely. See, because I'm a giving soul, Hooks. I'm a giving soul. Mm-hmm. So, Hooks, starting off here, you've had a really interesting career. A lot of twists and turns, a lot of different roles within the wrestling industry. Similar to myself, yours truly started off working as a photographer, video production, and then transitioned into, obviously, being a manager and an advocate and being, a guiding force for the talents of darkness worldwide, to a point of even, being forced to step inside the ring. You, prior to being, an absolute dominating force inside the squared circle, you were an announcer and a ring announcer. You were an announcer for the now defunct Heartland Wrestling Association, the HWA, which, for wrestling historians, they know all too well the storied history of the HWA, involving Les Thatcher, Cody Hawk, the current AEW World Champion Jon Moxley. Rather than me list accolades from that period of time, if you would, Hooks, please talk about beginning your career as an announcer and a broadcaster, and some of your highlights from that time period working with the very influential Heartland Wrestling Association. Well,
I'll just... first thing I'll tell you is just how that came about anyway. Is as all of us in the wrestling business are, was and always have been a huge wrestling fan. And I originally started going to HWA shows as a fan, and I was there every week. They did a weekly show. I was there for every weekly show, and then whatever weekend spot shows they did. It was always me and my friend, the first guys in line, and waiting out there all day. And we got to where we knew some of the performers just from being there. They knew who we were and appreciated who we were and how loyal we were. And I have a background in broadcasting as well. I went to college for radio TV broadcasting. So HWA had a TV show at the time, and they were looking for a color commentator. And Jackson Breeze was actually the first guy that reached out to me and asked me if I'd like to audition to be a color commentator. So I did a pre-tape, and it wasn't live. I did commentary along with some recorded matches, and I really didn't hear much about it after that. And then one night I was waiting to get into the weekly show, and someone came out and said, Cody would talk to you. Cody being Cody Hawk. I'm sure anybody willing to listen to this knows who Cody Hawk is. So I went into the office and talked to Cody, and Cody said, our regular commentator is not here this week. I want to give you a live audition. And so I pretty much just got thrown head first into it. And at the end of the evening, after the show was over, Cody pulled me aside and he said, look, you did a great job. I know you're dependable. You're here every week already anyway. So congratulations. You're our new color commentator. So really within the span of hours, I went from being a fan to suddenly being behind the curtain, which was awesome and exhilarating, but also a bit intimidating. Partially because he told me from the very beginning, he said, these guys have seen you as a fan, and now you're coming behind the curtain, so there might be some guys that, you're just going to have to earn everybody's trust. And the same lesson that's been told to everybody starting the business, mouth shut, ears open, which was no problem for me. I have no problem earning my spot. I have no problem being respectful, and which is what I was. And I was lucky that no one really ever hazed me or gave me a hard time about being there, because I show that amount of respect. But yeah, that's how I got my start. I got started as a color commentator, and we had a regular ring announcer who would sometimes not show up, and I would step in and take over for him when he wasn't there. And then he would have an extended absence here or there, and I would take over. And also during that time, HWA had a working relationship with the Northern Wrestling Federation, and I ended up working at the same time doing ring announcing and commentating for the NWF as well. So I always tell people that I'm really spoiled as far as how I started in this business, because you start from the bottom, but I started with one of the best companies in the area, and I was constantly under the learning tree of, I look at the guys I worked with and that guided me and helped me in the HWA, and there's too many to name all of them, but just to name a few, Cody Hawk, Jackson Breeze, Brock Guffman, Joe Lopez, people that have been there, done that, have just amazing minds for pro wrestling, and I got to sit under their learning tree every week. And then, at the same time, I'm working for Roger Ruffin, who has been everywhere and done everything. And if you can work with all those people I just mentioned, and not, even just by osmosis, but let alone asking advice and listening, if you can work with those people to learn something, then you need to just... So I had the privilege of working in both of those companies with some of the best wrestling minds around, not only in this area, but just in general.
Well, yes,
so I had a great start.
Just to briefly interject, Hooks, for anyone listening to this episode of Radio Dark that may not be familiar, and I'm sure it'll be very few, but for the few, the minority that may not be aware, just to illustrate exactly what you're saying, Cody Hawk, considered the trainer of champions, won the 2019 Trainer Award at the prestigious Cauliflower Alley Club Awards Banquet in Las Vegas, Nevada. Individuals he has trained, John Moxley, Eli Drake, and Sami Callihan. On the flip side of that, Roger Ruffin, mainstay here in the Cincinnati wrestling scene with the Northern Wrestling Federation for several years, attributed to training Chad Too Bad Allegra, otherwise known as Machine Gun Carl Anderson, the Monster Abyss. As well, if I'm not mistaken, he also trained or had a hand in training Jillian Hall. So we're talking about two individuals that have a proven track record of success, not just producing quality talent locally, but producing quality talent that have gone on to star on a national and international platform for WWE, TNA, Impact, AEW, etc., etc., etc. So, you, without question, Hooks, around some of the best in the wrestling industry.
Yeah, I got to watch them far, watch them run shows, and watch them run, and whether it was watching and leading by example, or like sitting in an office with them and chatting and picking their brains. Like, I got to learn these guys on a weekly basis. And I'm so grateful for how I got started. I know a lot of people get started in this business, unfortunately. There's always somebody out there willing to take your money and claim that they're, it seems like anybody that can buy a ring and set it up thinks that they're a wrestling promoter or a trainer. But I got the privilege of working with two of the absolute best from day one.
So when you were an announcer, and a broadcaster.